I'm going to invite our speakers up for a panel Q&A. So please come up to the stage again, Tom, Kathy and Josh. To streamline it, we've actually collected the questions that have been popping up. You might have seen some of them on the SMS. If you do have one though, please put your hand up and we'll get a microphone to you. But I'm going to start off with these questions that have come through the evening. So, are traditional businesses changing too and keeping up with the millennials? So, I'm going to start with Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's changing from both. I mean, I think it's changing from all directions at once, to be honest. I mean, kind of traditional businesses are both being pushed by their consumers, they've been pushed by their staff, and they've been pushed by new competitors created by potentially younger entrepreneurs, but not always. As I said, kind of millennials are where we see these trends the most, but it's by no means a uniquely millennial thing, of course. I mean, I really got my sense of purpose from my parents, who led very purposeful lives with their business activities as well. So I would never want to claim that it's some new invention. But yeah, I think they're feeling it from all sides, and the best of them are adapting quite quickly, I think. What do you reckon?
Any weigh in on those ones?
Yeah, I agree, and I see it in my old company, Coca-Cola, because I still keep in contact with a lot of people from there. They are jumping on it big time because they know these young kids that are coming out of university care a little bit more than just earning money. So they are putting in place programs that will connect with what they're looking for. So yeah, I think you see it everywhere.
Interesting. When I was first, when I was running VibeWire, I came across this concept of corporate social responsibility, which was very hot at the time. And the not-for-profit sector was really excited. They felt like corporates really engaging in these issues. And that proved to be a bit of a false dawn. Those CSR teams often proved to be slightly ghettos inside the company with very little money or influence, and you kind of didn't want to end up working with the CSR people. It meant that you weren't getting breaking through in that relationship. And we've seen this with some of our own corporate partnerships. We've worked with ING Direct, for instance, for the last 4 years. And our relationship began with the CSR team and then went to marketing and is now held by brand. And I can tell you that the resources they're able to bring to this partnership have increased exponentially through that journey once we got out of CSR and into the real heart of the business operations that had the clout and the resources to market. But what I was going to say is that HR, I think, has proved to be the key wedge. That I think they're really feeling this first, the people who are responsible for training managers. There's some people at my table who are doing work around teaching managers to manage millennials or recruiting them. And I think these guys have been dealing with these trends, every day. And that's been pushing changes up through the companies. And it's why corporate volunteering has become such a huge thing.
Yeah, I'm just seeing it like with the students that are approaching us all the time with, wanting to work with the social enterprise. They're just really passionate about it and, really dedicated. And then hearing their stories too about the corporates who are, doing programs with them as well, because I don't have so much direct contact with the corporate side anymore, but just hearing the stories through them.
We see it at our cafe in Manly. Most of the people that come to work for us because they know we're supporting our charity, and we've got a great team because of that.
So let's move on to the next question. How do we compare to other countries with social enterprise? I suppose that one, start with you again, Tom.
I guess it's really hard to say because there's there's a bit of an endless definition debate about exactly where you draw the line with social business, and it means slightly different things in different countries. If you're talking to someone from the UK and they reference social business, they almost always mean a business owned by charity, like your op shops. They're a social enterprise, whereas if you chat about it with someone from America, they almost always mean a profit-for-purpose startup that was created. In Australia, there's been some studies done. I think they think there's 30 or 40,000, but honestly, it's mostly just about asking people, why did you found your business? Because we're really talking about the motivations of the entrepreneurs. Social traders, who probably do the best work keeping track of this stuff in Australia, define a social enterprise as, they've got a couple of definitions. You're either producing impact through your operations, so the way in which you're manufacturing or you're creating employment for groups that would normally find it difficult to find employment, or you're doing so through the redistribution of your profits, and their definition for that is 50%. That if you're going to call yourself a social enterprise, of course there's ethical business. So this is all kind of grey area. I mean, of course, 10% is very meaningful, and I'm not trying to, but for social traders, that's, I guess, what they'd call an ethical business maybe, but not a social business. And what's important to know is not where we draw this line. I don't think that really matters. It's that we're moving along this spectrum, and that more and more businesses are going to be adding some philanthropic and social element. More and more are going to be built to do that entirely, and we're just going to move in general. It's the trend that matters, not the kind of the line we draw.
That's right, yeah, the outcome, as you said, is the most important thing. Because, yeah, there is so many different definitions. I was talking to a person the other day who looked up Wikipedia and they said, I can't remember what the definition was, but he identified with that, and he wasn't a business giving back at all. But he took the definition that Wikipedia gave, and so he said, I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm going, oh, that's a bit of a worry, So, yeah, it's a lot of grey area there.
So I'm going to go to the next question. I'm going to start with you, Kathy. Do you think young people these days care the way we did in the 70s? Are they politically mobilised?
Gosh, that's well, it's probably a matter of opinion. Look, I think they really do care. I really do. They've got just different ways of expressing that than, what we had. And as Tom has said, the whole internet and the digital age, that is just so massive. And so I think that their message is, further expanded, maybe more quickly, maybe greater. But I don't know if they're necessarily, more politically motivated than we were.
I think they're engaged, but I think they expressed it in a different way. And I think today's politicians haven't tapped into that yet, how they're expressing themselves. And that's really interesting to see how that plays out over the next few years.
There's at the Social Good Summit I was at the other day, there was a woman called Katerina Sullivan who's about 21. She's all the wisdom and experience of a 21-year-old, and she started Global Goals Australia. So she's actually gone to the politicians in Canberra, very similar to what you did with VibeWire, and basically just knocked on the door and said, I have an opinion, and I want you to tell me how you're going to translate the 21 United Nations Sustainability Goals into policy in Australia, and just basically didn't give up. So she's started that UN global movement in Australia, and I don't know whether it's politically motivated or more just, wanting to make a difference and being aligned to a cause.
I think they're definitely much more aware, though, because of the whole self-development. There's, it's just so much bigger now. So I think they're more developed than we were at that age, and so that comes across in the expression, as you were mentioning.
In many ways, it parallels some of the changes in people's career paths as well, is also mirrored in the way in which we engage with causes. For my parents, it used to be, and is typical for that era, long-term commitments to a few key organisations. And people, what political participation used to look like was showing up somewhere at a particular time and place, and that was in order to participate in your local branch of the Labor Party, or if you want to be part of Amnesty International, you literally got together and wrote letters in real deal. I sat next to each other while writing letters. That was how it happens. And of course today it happens, I get alerts on my phone from Amnesty when there's an emergency petition, and I think I just hit reply and say yes, and I'm added to that petition. And so you get this kind of slightly cynical notion of slacktivism, because they're like, well, that's clearly not as, you haven't tried as hard, you're not working as hard as we did back in the day. But what it's done is filled in all these missing rungs on the ladder. No, me hitting reply on that text message is not as significant as you showing up to a meeting, but it makes it more likely that I will at some point in the future show up to a meeting. And so it's built in all these different rungs of engagement. And instead of seeing, and I think you get a lot of cynical stuff around people who are on lower rungs, rather than a celebration of the fact that they're getting up the ladder and that they're actually engaging at all, just because it doesn't look like exactly what we expected in the past.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I'm probably guilty of the slacktivism, so I like the way that you put that. It makes me feel a little bit more engaged. Do we have questions from the audience? Yes, Morgan. Do we have a microphone just so Morgan doesn't have to yell?
I have a loud voice. All three of you had a aha moment, whether it be on a plane or whatnot. Not surprising, because you're all quite intelligent. Perhaps for the people that don't have the social ability to have that aha moment, what would you suggest to point that out to these people?
When you're not happy and you seek change, And I guess for me, I wasn't happy, so I went and looked elsewhere. I was doing well and I was loving my life, but deep down I wasn't truly happy. I don't think you can push someone into that or teach someone that, and it's about some kind of discovering your passion in a way. And it takes different adventures. We've taken people over to Tanzania and over to Nepal and over to Cambodia, and they have aha moments in that environment. But that person needs to want to go, and they're seeking something because they're going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say the aha moments will find you. It's really a process of self-discovery, and when you're ready, it will just find you. As you said, you don't have to go looking for it. But if you are wanting to, and I know that might sound a bit woo-woo, but the other thing that you could do if you wanted to just, I suppose, put yourself out there more is go and, volunteer or go on some of these experiences and immerse yourself and see what might develop out of that, because you will go on a journey anyway within those situations, and that might be what then comes up for you and leads you, if it's not that, leads you to another thing. Yeah.
I think we see this quite a bit through Start Some Good, because for me an aha moment is when you realise you can do more than you thought you could in whatever context. And I think we see that quite often, where people simply realise, oh my goodness, I'm allowed to put my idea out there and people might be interested in that, and I'm allowed to get involved in making a difference. And the aha moment that I see a lot is people realising that you don't just have to wait once every 3 years to vote, and that day is not the be-all and end-all of getting to influence the future of our country, but that you can do things every day. So people have aha moments that I witness about the entire idea of social enterprise, like a wall in their brain dissolves that used to separate out business activity from social purpose. Or we got this amazing email a couple of years ago from a woman who donated to a community organisation in Gosford called the Rhythm Hut, that had been evicted from their community centre. They're dedicated to the rhythmic arts, which is drumming, so they're really noisy, and they got evicted from their community centre, and they had 45 days to rally enough money to move into a new space and to soundproof it, and they did that with the support of 222 individual contributors. And one of those 222 contributors was so moved by the experience of giving a donation that she wrote to us, the providers of the platform, and said, you guys have transformed our community. I thought she was giving us too much credit, to be honest, compared to the actual people behind the community centre and so on. But she said, your initiative, we used to just wait for government to do things for us, but now we've realised we can do it for ourselves. And I think that was a real aha moment that they were experiencing just through that example, I think, of other people around them making things happening and realising maybe it's not as hard as I thought it was. It's not as impossible as I have been led to believe, and I could contribute to that too. Travel is obviously a place where people do have profound moments, but not exclusively, yeah.
Wow, there's such amazing questions. Just getting fantastic discussion. Is there anyone else who would like to, now last question, throw their hand up? Please, would you like the microphone?
I work for a local council on the Northern Beaches, and I'm keen to find out what the key challenges were for all of you guys setting up your businesses, and what people like myself at council can do to support local businesses and set up these amazing enterprises.
I'll shoot. There was a lot of challenges. First of all, I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never run a cafe before. I'd never started a trekking business. Manly Council is a tough one to deal with, and I mean, there was no face-to-face, there was no understanding of what we were truly doing. We were just another cafe opening up. As much as I tried to tell the story via email and try to get a little bit of assistance, it was just nothing. It was just do the documentation and we'll get to you in 4 months' time. So yeah, it was tough. It would have been great to tell my story and get them more on board and more engaged with what we're trying to do. And even now with the things they do in Manly, they rarely come to us to be part of that, which is a bit disappointing, but it is what it is.
You guys obviously should swap numbers and make sure that gets rectified.
We're actually doing quite a lot of work with local government at the moment. I don't want to be all like, have we got a partnership model for you? But we do. It's interesting. We've really shifted, without getting too deep in our strategy, from we were all about helping entrepreneurs go around the gatekeepers, and now we're all about actually linking to. So we've gone from this metaphor that we used to think about of like the path, you know, through the cut a hole in the fence and go through, and now we think about a bridge. Because there are a lot of people who want to support innovation in those traditional group of funders, government and foundations and high net worths. But supporting innovation is hard because it goes against our usual principles of wanting lots of data and making sensible decisions. Choosing to support things at an earlier stage makes decision making harder, and it also makes kind of deal flow harder. How do you even find things at that earlier stage? And so we do a lot of work with local government now whereby we work with kind of, we have a particular focus in terms of the types of projects they'd like to see more of, often social enterprises. And we work with them through a series of activities, either like innovation weekends, but ultimately we end up with a group of projects that we want to support, and we launch them together with the council providing partial funding and the rest having to come from the community. And so it's a way of ensuring that your funds are always kind of put behind what the community wants to see happen by saying we will back your decisions, we will support what you want to see happen, and the end result is that the projects raise more funds than they could otherwise. They get a lot of buy-in from the local community, and we think of it as a real form of local democracy, and I think that's why local governments really responded to this. We've worked with Parramatta, Adelaide, Melbourne, Fremantle. So far no other levels of government, and I think that's partly because it's in the kind of traditional DNA of local government to think about these kind of participatory mechanisms and to be more maybe open to exploring those sorts of things. So we're really excited about those sorts of models now.
And Kathy, you've got a different sort of business. So yours is an online business. Have you had any challenges, or has it been a lot easier?
Oh, well, it's not just online, because we also wholesale. We're in bricks and mortar stores too. But I was actually going to say, yes, that's always a challenge, trying to just build brand awareness. But I found finding the charity partner actually was my most challenging part of the business, because you know, we needed a particular type of charity. We wanted to make sure that the funds were going to get there. We wanted complete transparency. And I must have written to so many charities and they didn't even respond, or they said thank you but no thank you. And I was quite devastated. It was like, but I want to give you money, I want to help. Why are you ignoring me, you know? And yeah, that's right. That's what we should have met earlier. And so that was really a surprise. I wasn't expecting that at all, because we were all ready to hit the manufacturer, and you know, we still didn't have our charity partner because everything else happened so quickly. But the charity partner was what was actually slowing us down, because I knew that I did not have the means to start up a foundation. I didn't have the time, and I needed to have the right charity partner. But it did come good in the end, and you know, they found us and it was a great fit. But yeah, I couldn't believe how difficult that was.